Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. No, not again. I hate it when they play the Sicilian defense against me. I don't know how to beat them. So, stick around for this video, because today is your lucky day. I'm bringing you an incredible trap to destroy this defense, and it's a trap that works amazingly well. So, pay close attention to these moves. First, we'll develop our knight to f3, the most standard move after the Sicilian defense c5. The most common response from your opponent is to play d6. You already know this is the most natural setup for playing the Sicilian Najdorf, the Sicilian Dragon, the classical Sicilian, a lot of Sicilian variations. But here, they're expecting us to play d4 to continue with the open Sicilian. And we're going to play bishop to c4. It looks like a pretty beginner level line. In fact, your opponent might think, this person is playing the Italian opening against the Sicilian defense. What's going on here? Well, check this out. Let's see what the most common move is in this position. In this case, it's knight to f6. How are we going to punish all of that? So what are we going to do? We're going to push this pawn here to damage our opponent's pawn structure. This pawn on d6 is pretty strong, so now we're attacking the knight. They're pretty much forced to capture this pawn on e4. We'll recapture with the knight, and just look at the powerful attack we have here. Before we continue with this line, which is absolutely spectacular, I would really appreciate it if you gave this video a big like, since I'm bringing you these amazing traps for free every day. So if you want to support this channel for free, give it a big like, or even leave a comment. Everything helps, or a subscription. Everything helps. Alright, now let's continue with this drop. What are we threatening now with the knight and the bishop? Well, many of you have probably noticed that we're threatening this spectacular checkmate right here. Honestly, sometimes they don't even see this checkmate coming. And a lot of people, for example, play this move here, and we simply deliver mate. But that happens very rarely, because most of the time your opponent is going to see this checkmate. The other day, someone played this move against me, attacking both pieces at once, but of course it's just checkmate. Alright, let's see what happens if they defend against the checkmate, which is the most common thing to happen. e6, the most natural move to defend the bishop's diagonal. So let's see here, how we should continue, because this is the most natural move and the one you're going to see most often when you play this move. We're going to play queen to e2. What's the idea behind queen to e2? Well, it's to bring another piece into the attack, and let's analyze the situation a bit. We have a bishop that's still aiming, a knight that's also aiming, and a queen that's aiming as well. Therefore, many of you have probably already thought about some kind of sacrifice around here. Notice, for those of you who are more advanced, we see that there are two pieces targeting this square. So, our pieces are well positioned to attack our opponent. Also, we can castle on the next move, and our opponent still can't. Even in most of the traps we see here, we usually end up a pawn down, but in this case, we're even in material. So, what happens if our opponent doesn't do what we want them to do? Well, we're still in a good position either way. Let's see here. Our opponent wants to play knight to c6, but they can't. Why not? Because after the exchanges, look, this weakness that's left here, two doubled pawns, and also without support on the sides, is a chronic weakness that we can take advantage of throughout the whole game. So our opponent doesn't want to develop their knight via c6, and the most natural thing is for them to develop it via d7. So how do we punish this chess teacher? Well, as many of you are probably thinking, here the black pieces are already completely lost. Only about 5 moves have passed, more or less, and our opponent is already totally lost, because we're going to sacrifice the knight on f7. A lot of you loved the missile trap. Notice how this one looks a lot like it, but in the Sicilian defense. And let's see how this continues. Now we're attacking the queen and the rook, as usual. So, as you know, they're forced to capture the knight. Otherwise, they'd lose material. And now what? How do we continue? Well, we bring in the queen. Queen takes on e6, check, queen and bishop battery. And now here, they're pretty much lost. The king can't go back. He has to move forward. And let's see how to checkmate this king here. I'm sure many of you already know how to checkmate, but if not, I'll explain it to you. Look, first of all, let's push this h4 pawn forward. Why? To push it a bit further and keep the king under control. Also, we could move this pawn forward to control this diagonal with the bishop, which would be very useful for us. How can the black pieces continue here? Well, obviously, there's a threat of checkmate in 2 moves, so they have to try to stop it. So, how are we going to continue? First, we give a check with the bishop, and notice that now this king has almost no way out. The only move that can save them for now is this one, and we simply bring the queen down here. Checkmate. It can be taken with the pawn, but we capture it, and now, yes, checkmate. Impressive. So let's play an Italian opening, no matter how much they play the Sicilian against us. Bishop to c4. The most common move here, as we've seen, is knight to f6. And let's see if you remember what move we had to make here. Exactly e5, threatening this knight, and if it moves, we gain a tempo. So they're pretty much forced to capture. After the exchanges, we're putting pressure here. We're threatening this checkmate with the bishop and also bringing in the knight. So most of them are going to defend it with e6. And here we're going to play queen to e2. What did we analyze in the previous variation? We analyzed that if they came here with the knight, we would simply trade it off and end up better, since black would be left with this bad pawn structure. And we saw that if they played knight to b7, which seemed like the most natural move, they would also end up losing because of this knight sacrifice. So here, many of you might think, well, I'm not going to do that. I'll just play bishop to e7 so I can castle on the next move. And it seems like there's no problem here. Correct. We simply castle. And what are we waiting for? We're waiting for our opponent to castle. Once they've castled, we're going to play a really strong move with our pieces, which is rook to e1. Why is rook to e1 such a good move at this moment? We're lining up our rook and our queen on our semi-open file. You already know that a semi-open file is a file where we don't have a pawn, but our opponent does. So it's a good file to place our rooks. And we're also putting more pressure on this e6 square, which was our goal from the start. And you might say, well, now let's see what the black pieces do here. There's something you need to know. Always remember the plan, the position, not the exact moves. For example, if they play a 6, they're threatening here, trying to trap your bishop. So whenever they play a 6, you need to remember to play a 4, okay? That's something you really have to remember. If they play a 6, you automatically play a 4, without even thinking about why, because now they can't play it anymore. After the exchanges, they'd lose the rook. So here, we play a 4. All right, now let's see how the game continues. If they play a 6, you just don't play a 4, and that's it. That's why I always tell you it's so important to really remember our plan, and not just the exact moves. Because if you only remember the exact moves, and you mess up one move, then you're already in trouble. Let's see. Here, they might try to develop the queen side. How can they do that? Well, knight to c6 has the same problem as before. We simply exchange here, and our goal will be to attack these two pawns. And we have a huge advantage because they're very hard to defend. So knight to c6 doesn't seem like the best move. Now yes, chess teacher, now they can play knight b to 7. Why? Because the king is no longer in the center, and now these sacrifices don't look so good, of course. Now, if I capture here, I don't have to white take with the king when I can take with the rook. So here, how should we continue? Well, that's right, I'm going crazy. Knight takes on f7, even though they have the rook. Yes, I'm going crazy. You already know that. Hey guys, you already know it, but this works. That's why I'm explaining it to you. What happens now if they capture with the king? Obviously, we come in with the queen and end up infinitely better. But of course they can take with the rook. And if they take with the rook, it seems like nothing is really happening here. But watch out guys. We come in with the queen. Queen takes on e6, we pin the rook, and on top of that, we're setting up a queen and bishop battery, a super strong pressure that they have to deal with in just one move. They have to defend this rook no matter what, and they'll have to do it with a queen. It doesn't matter if they defend it here or here, because our goal is the same. What are we going to do now? Take advantage of our rook and capture this bishop, because of course this rook can't move, since our bishop is perfectly pinning the rook. Simply, if they capture our queen, we recapture with the rook. And notice that here, we've not only won in terms of position and a couple of pawns, but now we're also going to win the exchange. This rook can't be defended. If they try to defend it, for example with a knight, we simply take it. So on the next move, we're going to win not just the exchange, what am I saying, the exchange. We're going to win the rook, and therefore, the game. This is what's interesting about playing bishop to c4. Because this diagonal is incredibly strong. So let's see what happens if they play something completely different. At the beginning, we'll play knight to f3, we already know that, d6, and instead of playing d4, we'll play bishop to c4. This is our plan. Of course, we saw that knight to f6 made things really good for us to play e5. But, of course, a lot of you tell me in the comments, Chess teacher, sometimes they don't play what you say. Alright, let's look at attack plans and how to go about it if they don't play the way I told you. They might play e6 to block this bishop's diagonal. In fact, it's a very common move when in the Sicilian they play, or we play, bishop to c4 aiming at this diagonal to play e6 to cut it off. Here, we're simply going to play the flexible move queen to e2 to try to reach the same position as before. So if they play knight to f6, which is the most normal thing in the world, we can push the pawn, and after the exchanges, we're in the same position. Yes, here we've reached the same position, but hey, relax, relax, relax. Because we're going to play different things so y'all can see how to end up winning the game. For example, before we continue with this, imagine that here, instead of playing knight to f6, black tries to play something like d5, which seems normal. Here they couldn't, because thanks to the queen, after the exchanges, they can't recapture. Therefore, this pawn on d5 wouldn't be possible. That's why the natural move is knight to f6. And here, now yes, after the exchanges, let's see how to continue if they don't go for the plan you mentioned. Let's see, chess teacher, we've seen knight to c6, we capture and double the pawns. Knight to d7, we continue with our plan. Like we saw earlier, right? Knight to d7 was a mistake because we could jump in with the knight. Bishop to e7, we would castle and calmly place our rook on the semi-open file. Now then, let's look at a sample game so you can see that what really works is the plan, not just the moves we've memorized. Imagine here that black plays a very logical move, which could be to move this bishop, but not to d7, instead to g6. To d6 to enable castling and to attack the knight. Also, this bishop is on a very active diagonal that, if we castle, will point directly at the h2 square and put us in serious trouble. Therefore, bishop to d6 is a good move. Let's see how to continue with our plan. We're going to castle calmly. As you can see, this is our plan. And now how are we going to continue here? How are we going to proceed? Our opponent castles as well, a very standard move. As you can see now, there aren't any sacrifices here or anything like that, because this bishop is still defending this square. Those sacrifices only exist when the knight is on d7, because it blocks the bishop's diagonal. And here we're going to see how to continue. So here we're going to play the move f4, a very, very interesting move. Take a look at this plan. It reinforces this very strong knight. Now, they couldn't capture because we would be threatening this knight, and the game would be completely lost for black. Plus, we're threatening to swing the rook over to this side. The move f4 is very interesting, as long as they can't directly attack the king along this diagonal. Serious question, chat. Well, chat, we're not live right now, but rather subscribers and people who are watching this video. Subscribers and non-subscribers, what do we do if they play the move a6 against us? It's very interesting because they're putting a lot of pressure on us. It seems like a subtle move, but they're attacking us. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the video, we have to play a4. Why? To prevent this b5 move. So let's continue with the game. Now, black has to decide where this knight is going. If it goes here, obviously, we're going to go out. We're going to continue as always, right? We capture over here. Therefore, a more precise move might be to first defend with queen to c7, setting up a nice battery here with the queen and bishop, and also defending this square here. So, I'm showing you what to do if they don't play what chess teacher told us, right? Now they're playing in a completely different way. They played a6, okay, so we play a4, that's right. If they don't play it, we don't play it either, and that's it. Queen to c7, a totally different move. So our plan now is to open up this bishop along this diagonal. Check out what a great diagonal this is, since it needs to come attack this knight here. They play knight to c6, and serious question, what do we do with this knight? Do we trade it or not? Well, this knight has to be traded, no matter what. Why? Always remember, when they play the knight to c6, we have to trade it. Whether the queen is here or the queen is here, it doesn't matter. We trade it. Notice the threat. Not only is it threatening to capture and win a pawn, but also, look at this even stronger threat. Our queen's under attack, they're attacking us here, the knight could come through here. So, what do we have to do? We have to capture this knight, no matter what. And now, black has to decide how to recapture. Obviously, they've placed the queen there so they don't have to double these pawns. They capture with the queen, and let's see how we continue. Well, with our plan of placing this bishop along the diagonal, here we're threatening to double up on this knight. For example, if they play this move, which ignores the threat, what could we do? Many of you might say, we could capture this knight. Yes, we could capture it and open things up. But there are still better moves. And let's see, for example, I'm going to explain this to you. Why? Because a lot of people will try to defend this bishop. this knight, sorry, I can't talk. This knight so that they don't open up the castling, right? So that we don't open up their castling. And I'm going to show you how you should do it. So imagine first this knight. Where do we have to move it? Do we move it here? No, because we blocked the diagonal, right? We're going to move it over here. It seems like a strange move, but it's actually very interesting, right? We can do something like this, and suddenly this knight becomes good. All right, so now let's analyze. Imagine they play this move here. It doesn't matter, like I was saying, it doesn't matter if they play it now or if they play it earlier, just don't let them exchange this knight here. Let's see how to solve it. First, before this, let's see what happens if they threaten us with a possible checkmate over here. For now, you don't need to worry. We have the queen defending thanks to the move f4. As you can see, this f4 move is saving us from a lot. Alright, let's move a bit faster to see the plan, otherwise this will take forever. We bring our other rook into the attack. You know, classic plan. Why this rook and not the other? Because this rook is doing a great job defending this square here, which could otherwise be captured. Now then, after all these attacks, let's see what happens if our opponent plays knight to d5. A move that could have been played earlier and could be played now, as we mentioned, to avoid this bishop takes on f6 and having to recapture with g takes f6. Alright, if they play this knight here, let's see how to continue, because we have a huge advantage. And many of you might say, chess teacher, I don't really see that much of an advantage either. We're even, I don't know how to attack. Well, we've managed to remove all the pieces from our opponent's kingside, and now this bishop has opened up towards the g7 square. So, by bringing in the queen, notice that we're completely winning. We're putting pressure from all sides. Retreating with the knight wouldn't be possible now because it would be left undefended. So now, here they'd have to try playing a move like g6. And now we're completely winning. You can simply push this pawn forward. They can't capture with this one because it's pinned, so they have to take with the other. And now we bring in the rook. Notice that they can't capture here either. We're threatening everything. We're threatening the knight over here too. And we're also threatening a possible checkmate soon. First of all, they have to move this knight away. Plus, it threatens the rook. A rook that simply comes over here, taking advantage of the pin by the bishop and the queen. So at this point, we're already completely winning. Imagine they play this move here to threaten you with this. I'm going to leave it as homework for you to tell me in the comments how we can win here. We're already completely winning, but I'm sure many of you have already seen how to win. So I want you to leave me in the comments how we can win this position here. I read all your comments, as always. I haven't had time to reply to your comments on the videos from yesterday and the day before. I think it was those two. But little by little, I'll read all of them because I have a lot of work. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm looking forward to your answers in the comments to see if any subscriber has managed to solve this problem here, which I know you love. Give the video a big like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the daily videos and can learn a ton of chess for free. And I'll see you in the next video, friends. Goodbye for now.